Welcome back to another episode of the Inside Japan podcast, which is sponsored by JobsinJapan.com, the best place on the internet to get your next job in Japan. Today, I'm joined by Jared Campion, who's the co-founder of DreamDrive. They sell camper vans that allow you to travel around Japan and move to different places without having to, deal with public transport or dealing with hotels and ryokans and all that stuff. So thank you so much, Jared, for coming on the podcast.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah. So before we get into DreamDrive and you can tell us a little bit about what that does, I really want to know, what were you doing in Japan before you started this business?
Sure. So came in 2007 on a working holiday visa to travel, hang out, and just have a good time, and ended up staying. So I came here married with Australian wife. Now we have 3 children.
Wow.
Been doing. I started DreamDrive about 3 years ago.
Excellent. How was so I actually know a few people who have come here on working holiday visas, and I thought there was a term limit of about 1 year. How did you get around that and stay after you you finished your visa?
So it's basically switched. The short answer is I switched to a work visa.
Okay.
I came on the working holiday is very easy, just come and do whatever you like. And then with a work visa, it's a bit more complicated. But once you're here, it's easier to switch than to come here on a work visa.
Oh, so, that's great.
Yeah.
Wow, it's a long time ago because I came here in 2012. So right. You've been here a little while. So your kids and you all speak Japanese, or how do you get by in Japan?
I would say I can communicate well enough for my standard of living in Japanese, but my children are more fluent than I am. So we put our kids into local school. So they're fluent. And my Japanese is good enough to live and get things done, but it's definitely not fluent. So
that's interesting because and I've spoken to other business owners before about whether you actually need Japanese in order to start a business here, but you're proof that you don't necessarily need to speak Japanese to a highly fluent level.
I can get things. It's good enough to get things done, so I could incorporate and figure out the car rental licenses and other licenses I needed, using a mixture of Google Translate and just patience. I think everybody learns enough that they need to be in Japan, right, and operate. So for me, that's not very much. It just depends on the person, case by case. But okay. I think when you doing a business, we definitely need help. We have good people looking after that space. So hiring is super important.
So tell me a little bit about DreamDrive. What is it that you do, and why did you decide to start this?
So I started it because it's the business I always wanted to build, especially in Japan, because I feel traveling in Japan's great, but it's much better to drive here, I feel, than to use a public transport, because it opens a lot more places up to you. A lot of people are coming back to Japan for the 3rd, 4th time, and they're looking for that. They're looking for off the beaten track locations, and there's a ton of them. You got amazing onsens and great driving roads, and with Google Maps, it's really easy to drive here, even if you can't read Japanese. So it's a lot less complicated to me than using the train networks and buses and so forth. And it also means, and if you've got a camper van, if you've got your bed with you, if you've got cooking facilities with you, you've really got a lot of freedom, which is really hard to have in Japan. Because when you get out to the beautiful spots in the nature, Japan's not as convenient. It doesn't have great hotels anymore. It's a very rundown 70s style accommodation, which is kind of charming, but you're basically stuck in from 6 p.m. onwards in a hotel room watching Japanese TV. So I feel what we're bringing, and what inspired me to do this business, was giving people a much better kind of more adventurous travel experience, where you're seeing nature, campsites, and Japan's got amazing campsites and places for you to go to, and great onsen. So I just feel it's a really good match. And I living in Australia when I did, the common way backpackers traveled was by going to Australia, buying a camper van, and just traveling around. And I just felt like Japan's ready for that now. So initially, the steps, phase 1 of DreamDrive was we were building vans for rentals for the inbound market. So that's kind of what DreamDrive was. And now, because of Corona, we moved faster onto the production and sales. Like we did sell vans in the first year too, build and sell. And we're always doing that, and it's always part of our goal, but we weren't planning to focus on it this much at this stage. But without having the inbound market, only having the local expat market, it just pushed us towards making sales content for selling camper vans to the local Japanese customer base.
Right.
So,
And did you find it hard because of the pandemic? Did you find it difficult that, I guess a lot of your inbound customers from other countries who wanted to maybe come here for a couple of weeks and do, rent a camper van and travel around, that probably dried up quite a lot. So did you find it was really difficult to pivot towards sort of focusing on maybe selling, like rebuilding, putting together and selling those camper vans?
Well, luckily we raised money to do this business. So we already had that it wasn't, so I was able to raise money again. And I think we've done a good job with the first round. So we weren't able to raise as much as we would have liked, but we were able to kind of have enough to survive and be able to build out that new system and build the catalogs and build the products and the workshop. So yeah, it was definitely not easy. We had to refund everything, all our customers, and really is a big struggle. But we're at least able to get where we are now, where we're in a much better place. And I'm much more interested in the kind of business we're doing now, building and selling, because it's just made us much better. It gives us more angles. So even when inbound comes back, it'd be great to have that. We can now build up more camper vans for rentals because we're better at building vans, right? So if we needed to, it's like, quick, let's build our fleet bigger. So I think in that way, it's kind of a good, it was a good direction for us to go in. But it was a big risk because it was obviously a very expensive strategy, having to have that bigger team and a bigger workshop and everything. So.
Yeah, it's like go big or go home, right? You kind of have to. I think a lot of businesses I've talked to, like they've had to seek more outside money to try and keep afloat, and then they've had to pivot into something that maybe has better margins or something like that. You mentioned earlier about traveling around in Japan and going to like more rural areas, like the onsen and stuff like that. So what are some of your favorite places in Japan to travel to that maybe people, not necessarily like the really touristy places, not just like, Himeji Castle or whatever. What are some of the places that you've been to that you think like, this is a really cool place that like nobody knows about, and this would be like the perfect place to go if you had a camper van or you didn't have to rely so heavily on public transport?
Well, I mean, the simple answer is anywhere. But like just like look at the place that looks interesting on a map and just go there. And that's what we do sometimes. I don't have as much time to do that now. So when we were making the when we first started and we're having the inbound customers, we're making more itineraries and trips at that time, just to inspire people where to go. Once we build a few itineraries, more of my work has just been focused more at the depot, just with the production and stuff. But some of my favorite spots, our family likes to go use camper vans to travel. We like Nasu. We like to get out to deep Shizuoka. There's a bunch of Shizuoka's huge. You've got the whole Izu Peninsula all around Fuji, and then more deeper Shizuoka too. Going down towards Hamamatsu. Lots of amazing spots around there. And then the mountains around Nagano is really nice. Been up to Sendai, but honestly, seeing where our customers go to much better places than we get to go to. We do get a bunch of people doing those 2 or 3 week trips where they go all the way down to Kyushu, all the way up to like Sapporo, up to Hokkaido. So we're getting much more time to see some amazing places than we get to go to. So but we are making content too. We are starting to make content again next week in Shizuoka, deeper Shizuoka too. So we're starting to document again. So
because I mean I used to live in Fukuoka, and I remember like in summer it's so hot there, and I've always wanted to go to Hokkaido in summer, because Hokkaido is like much more chill, much more like the weather's much more reasonable during summer. And so I think having something like that freedom to go travel around different parts of Japan, that'll be really cool. I would love that.
It is really cool. And I think the other thing now is people who want to work on the road. So a lot more people can work from home. So some people are getting camper vans now, buying our camper vans because you can. It's basically a camper van is like your office, where you have your table, you have a power system, it has solar, so it replenishes the batteries, and it gives you that off-grid kind of workspace wherever you go. And that's really kind of a new category for the space. So it's like a obviously it's a car. It's you got your kitchen, cooking facilities, you've got your office, you've got your lounging, you've got your bed sleeping facilities. So it's a really interesting to see how this is developing with pandemic and with how people are wanting to travel now. Because some people just want to use it in their outside of their house. Give like a Zoom meeting or a phone call during like a time when they don't want to be like too noisy in their tiny house. So yeah, it's really interesting to see how it's developing.
That's really interesting. Do you find like a lot of maybe digital nomads and entrepreneurial people might think of that as a good solution for, because I've actually been very interested in like co-working spaces. I've talked to a lot of people who run them, and I used to work in co-working spaces, and I think that whole model during the pandemic has become kind of harder to work because people don't necessarily want to go to a co-working space. They want to have a space that's outside of their house to work, so they can separate between their sort of like their work time, and then when they're at home they don't want to be have their computer in their tiny in their house and thinking, oh god, I've got more work to do. So
it's like having it exactly in that way it's really useful, because it just gives you still have your same office and you still the same setup no matter where you are. And the other really exciting thing is to see people doing more like traveling overseas and bringing their vehicles with them nowadays as well.
Oh wow.
So yeah, there's a lot of we're looking at this kind of different way people are starting to use these products and really trying to design it around that as well. So yeah,
wow,
tons of interesting stuff going
on. Have you noticed anything different with the Olympics coming to town? Like, did you have more people either renting or maybe jumping out of Tokyo and getting out, or was it not really affected much by the Olympics?
We did get some, no, not so much. We did get some work from the Olympics. We did a bunch of media vans for one of the news companies, which is kind of nice. But just it wasn't really anything to do with camping. And there was a few bookings of people, but not. It's just now's a busy season anyway. So now it's August, right? So in summer, July, August, September is pretty busy. School holidays, so some people are trying to get out. But I wouldn't say it's Olympics was as good. It would have been much better, of course, if we had like the tourists. Sure. So yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. So what kind of specialist knowledge do you need to do this kind of thing? Because I know a lot of people who have tried to start businesses, and especially during the pandemic, a lot of them have really struggled. But your business seems like it relies on you having some like specialist engineering knowledge, right? Like you need to be able to fix up these camper vans and do some sort of like custom work on them, right? Like, is that something that was in your wheelhouse before, or was that something you've had to hire people for?
Both. So I studied cabinet making in Australia, but I basically was hands-on the first one, and I have been a bit more involved too. But it's very much like a team effort now. We've got much more talented people, because I studied it, but I didn't work much in that field. I pretty much went and got a desk job pretty soon after that study I did. I just felt it wasn't maybe for me to be like doing lots of sanding, especially at the time, 20 years ago. I would have just been sanding for like ages as an apprentice, and it didn't appeal to me that much of this time. But now it's really interesting having like the CNC CAD kind of like design tools and everything. It's a really interesting space. But all of our team in the workshop is Japanese team, because just tons of good craftsmen in Japan. So we've started to get people who've worked in the industry, literally the automotive conversion industry, which has been really good. And yeah, so it wouldn't make sense for me to be working on that so much anymore. But yeah, it's nice. I did grow up with camper vans in my family. I got to experience it in the UK and also in Australia. So I'm then coming to Japan and just seeing like how I think it's really interesting just in my background. And we were going to like the VW shows in England. We had like a VW kind of show camper van. And yeah, it's really interesting to see, for me to think about Japan with its unique climate of like hot summers, humid summers, and freezing cold winters, how it should be designed. Because I feel like a lot of the camper vans here, well, our industry as a whole, you've got like Germany and America, which are massive builders, like VW's huge camper van brands for Europe, including UK. But I think Japan's got a unique climate, and it's also got the Toyotas, which are great cars, and Nissans, which are really good vans, good compact size for small roads. So designing that and taking elements from Australia, which is Australia likes to be a bit more open, cooking outside. UK is a bit more inside because it's cold, than like doing it more cooking inside. So we're able to take elements from both those worlds and build something which is super flexible van, which in the future we'd really like to look at, like, okay, let's build it in Japan and export it, this product to other markets too. But that's going to take, I mean, that's not anytime soon.
Yeah.
So now we're very much just focused on the local Japan market because it's huge and there's a massive opportunity for us here. Bring that more like kind of European, Australian style of like build here to Japan. So.
Hi everyone, I hope you're enjoying the conversation, and I just want to take a quick moment to mention that this podcast is only possible because of the support of JobsinJapan.com. So next time you're looking for a job, check out JobsinJapan.com. There are tons of jobs on there, not only in English teaching, but also software engineering, hospitality, marketing and consulting, among many others. Most of the jobs on the board do not require any specific level of Japanese, and you can get started in minutes. So next time you're looking for a job, check out JobsinJapan.com, and let's get back to the conversation. It's super interesting because I wonder, before you started this kind of thing, you said that it seems like there was a big opportunity, but culture change generally happens really slowly in Japan. So I wonder if, things like having a camper van, was that something that sort of started to change? And then you thought, okay, this is growing in Japan, more people wanting to do this, so let's fill that need. Or did you feel like you had to build something and then go, okay, like now I need to convince people that this is a good idea? How did that work?
Yeah, good question. So Japan's got a pretty big market for camper vans. So if you look at builders here, you've got like Toy Factory or Nuts RV, Fantech, or there's a ton basically of big conversion shops. A lot of these places are building like 1,000 a year. And you'll really notice it if you get out to, when you get like, you don't see much around Tokyo, right? But if you get out to some of these beautiful towns and villages, you'll see like the Michinoeki or roadside centers completely like packed with campers. And the sales to me was, I was very interested in the space because I was thinking, I mean, it sounds strategic. Honestly, I just wanted to do it because I wanted to do it. So I should act like this is like a massive. This is exactly the business I want to build. It wasn't like, so I was looking for reasons why I should do it at the time, and I just felt like Japan's a great place to build cars because just looking at the facts with that, and there's a lot of good talent in that space. Hard to find, actually, hard to hire, but it is here, and it was, to me, just really is a really interesting product, which I felt is something I felt okay, I could probably figure this out, because one of my main skills is actually hiring. I'm from headhunting background, recruiting, so I felt like, okay, if I can build an interesting product, if I can hire good marketing, advertising people, if we can develop a good culture, attract great people, then I think we can build something really kind of interesting. And then it's just about being committed to that and just going and just chasing it, and seeing how far we can get. And it's in some ways it's been a bit slower than I'd hoped. I think pandemic didn't help, but in other ways it's kind of I think we're in a good place. So yeah, but there's also another factor. So traditionally you've got like that backpacker market of people who want to travel overseas, use a van short term to get around. Then but Japan's got a 3-month tourist visa, so it's kind of good enough time to see Japan. And then, but people can't really. It's not like Australia. People can go on you have a working holiday, so actually it could, I guess it could develop a bit more. But we're wondering how it's going to develop. We weren't expecting people to spend a year here. But when you've got the retiree who will retire and buy a camper van, and because they want to tour around and see more of the countryside and take life a bit slower. And then I think there's the rise of like van life as well, which is all over Instagram and creating a bit more of a movement. So you got this kind of middle category now coming in, where people are very interested in the Instagram-esque vibe of it. And if you go to a campsite in Japan, you'll see a lot of amazing tent setups and everything. So that's, to me, it's like the tent culture in Japan's got so developed. People are taking amazing kitchen setups where they pack up all these tables, and it's crazy when you see how much stuff they're putting in cars. To me, the next progression of that is camper vans. And if you look at the UK or Australia, it's huge markets for people love camper vans because it gives you more flexibility. So to me, it's like, okay, it's like Japan's gone really deep on tents, way deeper than most markets go. So it's like it's kind of a natural progression. But I feel it's still there is a bunch of makers, so it's still, I think the market needs to open up a bit more for it to really be like a big opportunity. But I feel there's a good chance we're on the way there, and I think we've learned so much, and we're now in a kind of better place to start really scaling that. So
it's so interesting because I guess because of the pandemic, I've been stuck in Tokyo for a while. So I haven't really, I used to go out on little day trips and stuff to the countryside and see what was going on, but I don't see any of this stuff. And so for me, I'm just like, is there actually a market for that? Are there actually people doing that? And it's interesting to find out that people are. So was that something that you had to
Google Fumoto Para? Like Fumoto Para is one of the big campsites near Mount Fuji. And you'll see some but there's many campsites where it's just packed. And a lot of people want to take the camper vans to campsites, so not necessarily use it anywhere. But with a camper van, you don't have to go campsite, so that's part of the charm as well, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Was that something that you had to use when you were, because you said that you raised money to try to keep afloat at the beginning of the pandemic, and you also raised money at the beginning of the business. Was that something you had to you really had to look into, research the market and find out all this stuff? And did you find Japanese investors, or was it foreign investors who maybe understood this market a little bit more?
The recent round was mostly Japanese investors.
Okay.
But at first it was people I worked with previously, because I did have another stab at a startup which is bootstrapped. But I got to build a bit of a good network and maybe have some people who trust me a little bit from working with them. So then I think I had to get a pitch deck together and everything, and that was good. We've done pretty well with pitches because I think it's kind of a novel business compared to tech startups.
Yeah, right.
So but it's definitely not easy path raising. I think I was lucky enough to have worked with some people who I could tap on the shoulder. But I think people I think to raise money you've got to before I raised, I'd already had the rental license, I'd already got the workshop, I'd already built the first vehicle, had the first customer. So it wasn't like I said, hey guys, I've got an idea. I'd already fully committed, and I'd fully committed in, and I was doing it. And I think that's so to investors are like, well, this guy's doing it anyway. So am I in? I think that's how, and I knew them. So I think it's a mixture of all those things. But recently it's all mostly Japanese investors coming in. But we're to get to this point. So
but that is so important and that's something I think a lot of people don't recognize, is that in Japan, and I read this really interesting book about this. I'm blanking on the name of the book, but it's about different communication styles. I'll post a link in the show notes. But in Japan, a lot of trust is based on relationships, whereas in other countries, a lot of it's based on evidence, data, and things like that. So in America or in the UK, you can say, okay, well, this person's done this job before, so I'll trust trust them that they can do it because, you know, they have a track record of doing it. But in Japan, it's like, okay, maybe they've done it before, but really I want to get to know them a little bit. You know, like that's why they do all those things like nomikai, like going out for drinks, or you know, they get to know each other a little bit on a personal level, so that then they can feel like, okay, I have this relationship with this person, so therefore I can trust them. But that, I think people from foreign countries don't necessarily realize that. So they think, you know, why are we doing all these stupid things? Like, why are we going out drinking? This is a waste of my time. I can do the job. I can prove that I can do the job with all this evidence. But I think that's really important. So it sounds like that was really helpful for you, like having all of these people that you'd already worked with, that you already knew, that you had a relationship with, so that you could like actually reach out to them and say, hey, I'm doing this thing. Do you want to help? You know?
Yeah, for sure. Very true.
Yeah. So, okay, I think that's about all we've got time for, but thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Where can people find you if they're interested in the camper vans, renting one, or just finding out more about what you've done?
Sure, yeah. So DreamDrive.life is our domain, and we're on Instagram and YouTube. We're starting to release, we are starting to make more content like road trips and advice, so you can see it on our channel. And that's where, and if you're interested in getting a camper van for traveling and working with, reach out to me.
Awesome.
So yeah, we've got like other catalogs of information there too. So
yeah. Awesome. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Charles. Good to see you, man.
All right.